So today we're discussing 9 things you should highly consider about 3D printing before going out to Amazon and buying one. Although, I just went out and bought one when I started, so I get it. They are pretty cool. But please consider checking out my tips before making that purchase. No matter how cool they are a tool after all, and should be handled with some level of respect. Of course, at their heart, 3D printers handle files that are 3D, and so we'll get into that in just a minute. Number 9. Before you buy a printer, decide what you want it for. One of the biggest things we don't really think about right away is, what are we going to print? What's the first thing I'm going to go out and get an STL file of? Do you even know what an STL file is? Again, we can get into a deeper discussion about that. But if the answer is little minis or smaller bits and figurines, then a resin printer with a smaller to medium-sized plate is probably good, and you should be golden as long as you're using all the recommended settings and resin, etc. If you're looking for big stuff, then maybe what you're looking for is FDM or just a bigger build plate resin printer that's going to help accommodate that for you. But all things you need to consider before opening up your checkbook and writing that check, or using that debit card, or however it is you pay for stuff these days. Number 8. Alright, so you got a printer? Great. Where are we going to put it? Keep in mind it needs to be in an area that is clean, neat, clear of dust and other crap. This is near impossible to be completely clean, but it also needs good ventilation for any fumes or smells. And if you lack this space, think about this a lot before buying, because every time you move that printer around, you're going to have to re-level the build plate, or you're going to have to re-level it again, regardless of the type of printer that it is. So spatial consideration is very important. You need to have a workspace for your printer. Number 7. Supplies and cost of them. See, the printer itself may be cheaper than the expensive ones these days, and there are some budget ones that are very, very cheap. That doesn't mean that the printers themselves aren't going to be inexpensive to run. LCD printers will eat up screens. You will need screen protectors, gloves, alcohol, cleaners. Otherwise, for FDM, you're going to need some other supplies like gloves and cleaners and such like that. And probably a fire extinguisher, as some FDMs have, as some examples have caught on fire during extreme situations where the bed gets really hot and some plastic will melt. This isn't common though, so don't take my consideration as to oh god, the FDMs all catch fire. No, that's not what I'm saying. But do have a fire extinguisher handy in your, wherever you're working anyway. If you're working with any kind of chemicals at all, including alcohol, that's a flammable substance, so just keep in mind, you do need to keep something there to extinguish or put out a fire, whether it's a fire blanket or a fire extinguisher or some sort of fire retardant system. It's always a smart idea to keep something to keep safety going. Number 6. This one is for resin printers specifically and really only, but this goes along the lines of vat cleaning. And this is probably one of the biggest tips I can give anybody with vat cleaning kind of obsession, or anyone who needs any tips on this. You're going to go through a lot of vats if you don't follow this. And this is definitely something you need to understand. Every time you do a print, the manufacturer suggests that you dump all the resin, filter it back into the bottle, clean out the vat, wipe it down. Then sure, if you do this, yeah, you're going to keep your vat clean, and you're going to make sure there's no plastic in there, and you're going to make sure that you never have a tear. Well, at least not from that, but through all the constant wiping and wiping and wiping and wiping, and eventually you're going to wear down the FEP. Especially, it depends on how rough you are with your cleaning techniques. And if it's the only vat you have and you're just continuously dumping and cleaning it, you're definitely going to wear it down a little bit faster than you would if you just left it in there with the resin and just continued on your merry way printing. So this is really just more of a tip, and not as much as of a consideration, but this is also kind of a thing where you need to understand that vats are also another disposable part when it comes to the resin printers. And vats, you can either buy a whole vat or you can change your FEPs. Some companies have distinct FEP sheets that are part of an assembly, and they don't really allow you to kind of change the sheet very easily. And some are a little easier to change. So again, that's a consideration too. You should look into that as well when you're checking out the resin printer that you want. If you're going for a resin printer, is the type of vat, and is the FEP sheet proprietary? Is the FEP sheet not proprietary? Number 5, masks. You should always wear masks when dealing with plastics in general, but chemicals like IPA, alcohol, whatever, cleaners, sanding plastics, etc. All that stuff releases stuff into the air, and all of that is going to go into your lungs if you're not wearing a mask. So this is also something as a consideration too. Always make sure you have plenty of respiration gear, masks, protective facial gear, even if it's just a simple mask, just to keep a lot of the crap out of your face and out of your lungs. Definitely a smart thing to do. Please protect your lungs. Very important. You only have the pair. They're not going to give you another set. Number 4, supporting. Not all created equal. Pre-supporting is something that you should not trust from every single company. Unless you know, for example, they have a track record or you've used one of their files with success and you're just like, I know these guys are good. Don't trust them. Pre-supporting is very tricky. There's a lot of things that go differently between printer to printer. There's size differences, there's resin differences, and if they tell you that the resin doesn't make a difference with the supporting, that's not true. I have actually tested different styles of resin, like different qualities of resin per se, and with the same style of supporting, and the lower quality resins will fail on some of it, whereas the higher quality resins won't, with some of the more delicate supporting. So to say that doesn't make a difference definitely isn't true. I've seen enough of an example personally. I've seen how it works on some of the demonstration and prototyping that I've done for some of my own customers. So we do see the difference between okay, the prototype material definitely doesn't handle weak supports very well on the higher quadrants. They'll snap because its tensile strength isn't as good. So this is, the truth. But again, consideration, supporting. You need to either learn it or you need to consider finding companies that are reliable with pre-supports. Three, not all slicers are good. So if you're thinking, what is a slicer? Good. Then I'm glad you made it to this point in the video, because slicers are the software that prepare the files in 3D space and render them into 2D slices for the printer to read back into the MSLA format and allow the printer to read it back into resin or filament one layer at a time. MSLA, by the way, is really only for resin. That is the masking system that the resin printers use to make the layers. I highly recommend using Lychee if you're using any Cubic, Lament, Creality, a few other makes, Frozen. Elegoo works best with Chai2 box. Prusa works best with Prusa slicer. And a lot of the companies have their own slicers, but they are terrible, and I don't recommend any of them. Lychee has a very good community. If you go pro and premium, there's a lot of benefits. There's beta features and stuff that you'll get advanced releases on. So there's a lot of neat reasons to be part of the Lychee community, and I personally think they're great. There are other softwares out there. There's Tango, which we did a video or two on, and I personally don't hate it, but I don't love it either. So, I mean, it's kind of like pick your poison with that one, but we have our preferred software method for sure. Also, consideration of the fact that you will need to learn some software to do this, so don't forget that. Keep that in mind. Number 2, prepare for a little time commitment. Remember, this is a new skill set as much as some folks want to argue that it isn't, so don't get too mad if you fail a few times or have a few bad prints. It will happen. Just try again. Remember, the difference between a good print and a great print is the difference between committing some time into learning the software and learning how to hand support the files yourself. Number 1, materials matter. As much as 2K, 4K, 6K, 7K, or DLP make a difference in the types of quality you might expect in your prints, the resin itself also matters just as much, if not more. If you're using an 8K printer, please use 8K or 8K capable resins. If you're using a 4K, use at least a 4K plus standard resin. If possible, use an 8K resin as well. It will work just as good, if not better, and will produce more solid results as far as tensile strength and quality. As far as FDM, there's definitely a bonus to buying the more expensive filament or using a more quality filament versus the filament that you can get at cheaper prices in volume. Also, always make sure to clean out your tips and extruders to make sure that there's no clogging left in there if you ever have any failures, because one of the biggest issues you can have is you're going to wear down the nozzle where the filament comes out, and that eventually is going to cause even more clogging, and you're just going to have a bad time. And in closing, in consideration of all factors, if you're seriously looking into getting into the 3D printing field as a hobby, I highly recommend it, as it can be super fun and it can add the perfect thing to any modeling need that you might have. Otherwise, if you're looking for business or profit, I recommend it, but I also recommend you kind of take baby steps with this. As someone who does this as a profession, it's still something that we know is something we have to continue to learn and advance ourselves on. Otherwise, we're going to fall behind. So as a business model, it's tough. You really have to be on the edge of the emergent technology with this stuff, and you have to constantly learn better ways to do your job. So that is a consideration to think about there as well. Well, that's it. I hope you guys really enjoyed this and learned something. Don't forget to hit that like button if you did. Give us a sub and make sure you hit that bell if you want notifications of episodes like these. Anyway, see you all soon, and thanks so much for watching.